Don't skip. Your soulmate finally realized your true feelings. Now they can't stop thinking about you. The silence between two hearts is never truly empty. It carries every word left unspoken, every glance held for a second too long, every moment where fear defeated honesty. Long before today, your emotions had already traveled farther than your voice ever could. While you wondered if your feelings were invisible, something extraordinary had already begun unfolding beyond your sight. Your soulmate spent countless days believing that your kindness belonged to everyone. Every smile you offered, every thoughtful gesture, every moment of quiet support seemed ordinary in their eyes. They admired you, respected you, and found comfort in your presence, yet they never understood the depth hidden beneath your calm exterior. They mistook devotion for simple friendship and affection for natural generosity. Life continued moving as if nothing significant was happening. Conversations came and went. Days blended into weeks. Opportunities appeared only to disappear without either of you taking the courageous step that could have changed everything. Yet destiny has a remarkable way of protecting truths until the perfect moment arrives. Then came the day that altered everything. It wasn't a dramatic confession. There was no grand speech, no crowd applauding, no cinematic declaration beneath the stars. Instead, realization arrived quietly, wrapped inside a seemingly ordinary event. Someone mentioned your name during a casual conversation. At first, your soulmate smiled politely, expecting another simple story. But the conversation slowly revealed details they had never noticed before. They heard about sacrifices you had made without expecting recognition. They learned about moments when you chose their happiness over your own comfort. They discovered countless invisible acts of care that had quietly surrounded them for longer than they could remember. Each sentence felt like another missing piece sliding perfectly into place. Suddenly memories began replaying inside their mind. The encouraging words you offered when everyone else criticized them. The way you celebrated their smallest victories. The concern hidden behind your gentle questions whenever they looked exhausted. The times you disappeared after helping them, never waiting for appreciation. None of it seemed accidental anymore. Their heart became restless. Questions filled every corner of their thoughts. What if everything I believed was incomplete? What if they loved me all this time? What if I overlooked the most genuine person in my life? That night became unforgettable. Sleep refused to visit them. They turned off the lights only to discover that darkness made your memory even brighter. Your laughter echoed inside their imagination. Your eyes appeared every time they closed theirs. Your words repeated endlessly. For the first time, they realized something impossible to ignore. They weren't simply remembering you. They were missing you. Every quiet minute became another reminder that your presence had quietly become part of their emotional world. Morning arrived, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. The places they visited reminded them of conversations shared with you. Songs suddenly carried meanings they had never noticed. Simple objects awakened unexpected memories. Even ordinary routines became emotional because somehow every path seemed connected to you. They tried distracting themselves. Work couldn't silence their thoughts. Friends couldn't change the subject inside their heart. Entertainment lost its excitement. No matter what they attempted, one truth remained. You. Always you. Hours turned into days. Instead of fading, the realization became stronger. Their heart finally accepted what their mind had ignored for so long. You weren't simply someone who cared. You were someone who loved without demanding anything in return. That realization carried unexpected weight. Regret quietly entered their heart. They remembered moments when they unintentionally disappointed you. Times they responded too slowly. Occasions they overlooked your efforts. Conversations they ended too quickly. Now every forgotten detail returned with astonishing clarity. Instead of guilt pushing them away, it created something far more powerful. Determination. They wanted another chance. Not because they felt obligated. Because they genuinely wanted to understand the incredible person they had underestimated. Meanwhile, you continued living your own life, unaware of the emotional transformation taking place elsewhere. You assumed nothing had changed. You believed your feelings would remain your private secret forever. Little did you know that every hidden emotion had finally reached the heart it was always meant to touch. For your soulmate, the greatest mystery was no longer whether you loved them. The greatest mystery became whether they still had time to show you that your love had finally been seen. And with every passing sunrise, one certainty grew impossible to deny. They could no longer stop thinking about you. Every heartbeat carried your memory. Every quiet moment whispered your name. Every hope pointed toward a future where silence would finally be replaced by honesty. This was not the end of the story. It was only the moment destiny finally opened the first door. The journey ahead would demand courage, patience, forgiveness, and faith. Because sometimes the strongest love isn't the one that begins quickly. It's the one that survives misunderstanding, grows through silence, and finally finds its voice when two hearts are ready to hear each other. The days that followed became unlike anything your soulmate had ever experienced. Every sunrise brought a fresh determination to focus on ordinary responsibilities, yet every sunset ended with the same realization: you were still the first person crossing their mind. They wondered how they had overlooked something so precious for so long. The memories became sharper with every passing hour. Tiny moments that once seemed ordinary now carried extraordinary meaning. A simple smile you gave during an ordinary afternoon suddenly felt priceless. A conversation they barely remembered now echoed inside their heart with unexpected warmth. Even the moments when silence filled the space between you revealed a connection they had never fully understood. It was as though someone had quietly lifted a veil from their eyes. For the first time, they saw your kindness not as habit, but as devotion. They saw your patience not as personality, but as quiet courage. They saw your consistency not as coincidence, but as love. And once the truth settled into their heart, there was no returning to the person they had been before. Yet another emotion slowly appeared. Fear. Not fear of loving you. Fear that they might already be too late. Questions filled their thoughts from morning until night. What if your feelings had changed? What if waiting had exhausted your heart? What if silence had convinced you to let go? Every possibility felt heavier than the last. Meanwhile, your own life continued moving forward. You had learned to hide disappointment behind quiet strength. You smiled when people expected you to smile. You celebrated others even while carrying unanswered questions of your own. Deep inside, a small part of your heart had stopped expecting miracles. You had convinced yourself that loving someone without recognition was simply part of your journey. But destiny had been writing a different chapter all along. One evening, your soulmate found themselves standing in a familiar place, a place connected to one of your happiest conversations together. Nothing extraordinary happened there. No magical signs. No mysterious voices. Only memories. They remembered how comfortable your presence had always been. How peaceful ordinary conversations became. How laughter arrived naturally whenever you were near. Suddenly they understood something important. They had spent years searching for excitement while quietly overlooking peace. And peace had been standing beside them all along. That realization changed everything. Instead of waiting for perfect circumstances, they decided something had to change. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. They began writing down every memory they could recall involving you. The notebook filled quickly. Moments of encouragement. Moments of kindness. Moments of sacrifice. Moments where your happiness depended entirely on seeing them smile. By the time they reached the final page, tears had quietly appeared. Not because of sadness alone. Because they finally understood the depth of what had been given to them. Love had surrounded them for so long that it had become invisible. Now they could see nothing else. The following morning brought a quiet determination. They no longer wanted to guess. They wanted truth. But before speaking to you, they knew they needed to become someone worthy of your trust. So they began changing themselves. Not dramatically. Not for appearances. But sincerely. They became more patient with others. More grateful for small blessings. More honest about their emotions. More willing to admit mistakes instead of defending them. Every step felt like preparing their heart for a conversation that might change both of your lives forever. Still, doubt occasionally returned. What if they don't believe me? What if I've already caused too much pain? What if forgiveness isn't possible anymore? Those questions lingered. Yet one answer always remained stronger. If I stay silent now, I'll regret it forever. Far away, without realizing why, you also began feeling something unusual. An unexpected sense of peace settled over your heart. It wasn't certainty. It wasn't knowledge. Only a quiet feeling that something unfinished was slowly moving toward its rightful ending. You couldn't explain it. You simply felt lighter. Hope, which had almost disappeared, quietly returned, not loudly, but gently, like the first light before sunrise. Neither of you knew exactly what the future would hold. But destiny had already begun pulling two separate paths toward the same destination. Soon, words that had remained trapped for years would finally be spoken. Not through grand promises. Not through impossible fantasies. But through honest hearts that had finally learned the value of truth. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the moment both of you had unknowingly been waiting for was drawing closer with every heartbeat. Morning arrived like any other, but neither of you realized that this ordinary day would become unforgettable. There was no dramatic sign in the sky, no mysterious message, no miracle that announced what was about to happen. Life simply continued, quietly guiding two separate journeys toward the same destination. Your soulmate woke earlier than usual. For the first time in a long while, they stopped making excuses. They no longer wanted to hide behind uncertainty. Every unanswered question had become heavier than the fear of hearing the truth. As they looked out the window, one thought remained stronger than every doubt. I have to tell them how much they truly mean to me. Meanwhile, you carried on with your day, unaware that someone was gathering the courage they had spent years avoiding. You believed it would be another ordinary chapter in your life. You smiled politely, completed your responsibilities, and tried not to think about feelings you had buried deep inside your heart. But sometimes destiny works most quietly when everything appears ordinary. As the afternoon unfolded, familiar places began to stir old memories. Every street seemed connected to a forgotten conversation. Every passing breeze carried echoes of laughter once shared. Even the smallest details reminded your soulmate of moments they had once overlooked. They finally understood that love is rarely built from grand events. It grows through consistency. Through showing up. Through quiet acts of kindness that ask for nothing in return. That realization filled them with both gratitude and regret. They remembered the countless times you had been there when life became difficult. You had listened without judgment, encouraged without expecting praise, and believed in them even when they struggled to believe in themselves. Those memories became impossible to ignore. For a brief moment, fear whispered one last warning. What if you're too late? But another voice answered immediately. The only certainty is that silence changes nothing. So they took the first step. Not toward perfection. Toward honesty. Each step forward felt lighter than the one before. They weren't walking toward an impossible dream anymore. They were walking toward the truth they had finally accepted. At the same time, something unusual happened within you. Without understanding why, your thoughts drifted toward them more often than they had in months. A memory surfaced unexpectedly, a simple conversation that had once made you smile for the rest of the day. Instead of sadness, it brought peace. You quietly whispered to yourself, I hope they're happy. You never expected that, at almost the same moment, they were hoping exactly the same thing about you. Fate has a remarkable way of revealing how closely two hearts can move without realizing it. As evening approached, your soulmate paused before reaching the place where they believed they might finally see you again. Their heartbeat quickened. Their hands trembled slightly. Not because they feared rejection alone. Because they understood the importance of what they were about to do. For years, emotions had remained hidden beneath ordinary conversations. Tonight, they would no longer hide. They took a deep breath. Not to erase fear, but to move forward despite it. When your eyes finally met, time seemed to slow. Neither of you spoke immediately. There was only silence. Yet this silence felt completely different from the silence of the past. Before, silence had separated two hearts. Now, it connected them. Your soulmate noticed something they had never fully appreciated before. The kindness in your expression. The quiet strength behind your smile. The warmth that had always been waiting patiently. They realized that the person they had searched for in countless places had been standing before them all along. Their voice finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking about you every single day." The words were simple. No dramatic speeches. No impossible promises. Just honesty. For a moment, you couldn't answer. Not because you didn't care. Because the sentence you had once imagined hearing suddenly became real. Your heart, once guarded by disappointment, hesitated between hope and caution. Could this truly be happening? Or was it only another beautiful moment that would disappear as quickly as it arrived? Your soulmate seemed to understand that hesitation. Instead of rushing for an answer, they spoke gently. "I don't expect you to trust my words immediately. I only ask for the chance to show you, through my actions, that I finally understand what your heart has been trying to tell me all along." Those words carried no pressure. Only sincerity. For the first time in a long while, neither of you felt the need to pretend. The conversation that followed wasn't about the past alone. It became the beginning of something entirely new. Not a perfect story. Not a fairy tale. A real connection built on honesty, patience, and the willingness to heal what silence had once damaged. As the stars slowly appeared overhead, both of you realized something remarkable. The greatest turning point had not been the confession itself. It had been the courage to stop hiding. And somewhere beyond that quiet evening, another chapter was already waiting. A chapter where love would no longer remain unspoken, but would be tested by the challenges that every genuine relationship must face. That evening ended without dramatic promises. There was no declaration that everything would suddenly become perfect. No impossible vows were exchanged beneath the stars. Instead, both of you walked away carrying something far more valuable than excitement. Hope. For the first time in years, hope belonged to both hearts instead of just one. As the days unfolded, your conversations slowly returned. At first they were cautious, almost fragile, like two people learning an unfamiliar language. Every message was thoughtful. Every reply carried sincerity instead of uncertainty. Your soulmate had made a quiet decision. They would no longer let words outrun actions. Instead of making grand promises, they began proving that the realization inside their heart was real. They remembered the little details you once shared. The dreams you spoke about, the challenges you faced, the goals you almost gave up on. This time, they listened with complete attention. You noticed the difference. The person standing before you wasn't simply saying the right things. They had changed. Not overnight, but deeply. Still, your heart carried scars. You had spent so long protecting your emotions that trust could not return in a single moment. Every kind gesture was welcomed, yet a quiet voice inside you whispered, "Don't fall too quickly. Make sure this is real." Your soulmate sensed that hesitation. Instead of becoming impatient, they respected it. If trust takes time, they said gently, then I'll be patient. I don't want your belief because you feel pressured. I want it because my actions have earned it. Those words settled into your heart like gentle rain after a long season of drought. Weeks passed. The bond between you grew stronger, not through dramatic adventures, but through ordinary moments. A shared laugh over something small. A conversation that lasted longer than expected. Quiet support during difficult days. Honest apologies when mistakes were made. Both of you began to understand that love is rarely built by extraordinary events. It is strengthened by ordinary faithfulness. Then came the first real challenge. A misunderstanding. It started with a missed conversation and an assumption neither of you intended to make. Hours passed without hearing from each other, and old fears quietly resurfaced. Your heart wondered. Have things changed again? Your soulmate questioned. Did I accidentally hurt them? In the past, silence would have created distance. This time, something different happened. Instead of letting fear speak, both of you chose honesty. The conversation was not easy. There were moments of uncertainty. Moments when emotions threatened to overpower understanding. But neither of you walked away. You stayed. You listened. You explained. And together, you discovered something important. Real love is not the absence of problems. It is the willingness to solve them together. That single moment became stronger than hundreds of perfect